Welcome to another episode of Trash Talk. I'm Jon-Bernard. This is Nick. We're the Kairouz Brothers, bringing you the news of combat sports this week. Nick, we're coming off our own combat sports. We just participated in our first debut with Melbourne City Wrestling. My body's still sore. We did a 3D on some opponents. How's the body feeling? And are we the best tag team in Australia?
We're not the best tag team yet, but we're undefeated, definitely.
Yeah.
And look, one of the best experiences of my life, hitting a 3D on some dirty Greeks. And now, look, wrestling, my respect for professional wrestlers has gone through the roof.
Skyrocketed through the roof.
Trying to actually hit moves and actually take bumps is extremely difficult. It's so tough. I tried to hit the 3D a few times in practice.
Yeah.
And my body and my arm was struggling.
I felt like I tore my triceps. Now I understand why CM Punk was out with 2 tricep injuries. Edge tear his tricep. They're just landing on their arms and their back constantly. Randy Orton, back fusion surgery, all these. It is a dangerous sport.
Look, I'll give
them their respect.
I'll give myself a pat on the back.
Yeah.
I am a natural fighter.
You're an athlete.
Kurt Angle, when he describes his first instances in trying to be a wrestler, he took a bump and ran away. I took the bump, I wanted more.
Well, look, we've had our experience in the ring. Now we've got to get into the octagon. I wouldn't mind trying to get into the octagon, test myself with a wrestle against someone.
Look,
I think that's going to happen down the line.
I'll pass. I'm sticking to the squared circle. I don't want anything to do with any sort of wrestling, any sort of real fighting. I'll pass.
Let's get into the MMA hot take of the week. This week's hot take, Demetrious Johnson isn't a top 5 fighter of all time.
I don't really think that's a hot take because it's actually quite popular among people that hate the flyweight division, which is someone like me. Demetrious Johnson, when you actually look at it as a pure fighter and someone that, his arsenal and repertoire of moves, he's definitely a top 5 fighter of all time. But he's lost in his division. He lost to Henry Cejudo. He never really went up in weight and was successful, so he doesn't have that argument either. And he wasn't in the UFC his whole career, which is, unfortunately, something that is a drawback on your career. Yes, you went and were traded for Ben Askren. It really shows you that Dana White didn't really see you as that big of a fighter. Now, I can understand if people do have him in their top 5s because he's a freak of a fighter. One of the more complete fighters, wrestling, striking, I'll give it to him.
Yeah.
But in my personal top 5, he's not there, so I don't really see this as a hot take, but he's not in my top 5. It's hard.
I think you got to give him his respect because when you're talking pound for pound, you have to include the flyweight division, whether you like it or not. And I'm going to say it is quietly one of the most entertaining divisions because you just see guys go out there, strike each other. They're some of the best, well-talented technical fighters. So I personally like Demetrious Johnson. I think he was a bit hard done by with his time in the UFC. Deserves more respect from the company that he didn't get. Went over to 1, lost by KO in 1. So again, I wouldn't put him in my top 5 list personally. And when I include top 5s, you got to be a draw. You got to be a draw, and he simply wasn't that big of a draw in the UFC. Talented fighter, would belt the shit out of me, but just wasn't a top 5 draw.
To be fair, that loss in 1, he did avenge. He ended up beating that guy twice. But I think the consensus for me is not a top 5 fighter, but definitely a top 10 fighter. There's no way if anyone that's a fan of the UFC or MMA, if he's not in your top 10, you don't know what you're talking about. I think that's a fair way to put it.
Well, it was an emotional retirement for Demetrious Johnson in the octagon. Known he saw his ball and his eyes out. People ask Dana White, Dana, what are your thoughts on Demetrious Johnson retiring? Dana White kind of contradicted himself from all over these years and kind of said, I was always defending Demetrious Johnson to the public. But that's kind of a backflip from what and how he did treat him. He never paid him well, like in line with other champions. Like it didn't really make sense with what Dana said.
It was a bit of revisionist history there from Dana. Look, Dana's arc at the moment, it's really weird. He's either hating on certain fighters or he's been the biggest defenders. Like his stance on Jon Jones drastically changed from 2020. His stance on Demetrious Johnson now, it's drastically changed from before. There's no way Dana White, who did say Demetrious Johnson guaranteed Hall of Famer, which he is, but there's no way someone like Dana White, who traded Demetrious Johnson for Ben Askren, Dana White, who wants to shut down the flyweight division, there's no way he's saying, oh, I was the one that was defending Demetrious Johnson from the fans. What defending? You're the one that was shitting on him.
Yeah,
you're defending him from yourself.
It wasn't really shitting on him personally. It was shitting on the whole division. Dana White, he dislikes the flyweight division. And again, Demetrious never made the jump up to bantamweight to become that draw in a larger, weight division. So I kind of sympathize with Dana there. But to go and say that you were defending DJ when the fans were going at him doesn't really make sense. You never paid him like in line with other champions.
Yeah, and that's a massive point. You didn't treat him the way you treated other legends of the sport. Similarly, like Demetrious Johnson, very similar in his dominance of his division to someone like Jon Jones, but wasn't really treated the same, wasn't really paid the same. And I know Dana probably doesn't have a problem with him personally, but he didn't really like his fight style or his persona, which again, Dana, I understand. But now that he's retired, don't try and get some sort of positive outcome of it by saying like, oh, I was defending him the whole time.
At least he did say he will be in the UFC Hall of Fame. He said there is a spot for DJ in the UFC Hall of Fame. And you don't know if Dana was defending him behind the scenes to media members, behind closed doors. I don't know, but I think DJ does deserve his respect as one of the best fighters in the game.
Definitely. But that takes us to the next point of Dana White. Talking more, I'd say shit, but like there's something just wrong with Dana White at the moment. He was going through his Mount Rushmore. Dana White was asked about his Mount Rushmore, and on his Mount Rushmore, he said he has Ronda Rousey, John Jones, George St. Pierre, and Conor McGregor. Now, Bernard, I don't know about you. Do you agree with that Mount Rushmore?
Look, he was saying it on a little ESPN mic, so it was, he could have been thrown off by the question, doing these little media days. He's trying to promote UFC NOCHE right now, so there's a lot going through Dana White's mind right now. But to have Ronda Rousey in your top 5 does not make sense to me at all.
Mount Rushmore's 4.
Whatever.
Mount Rushmore's 4.
The top 4, top 5. Look, I can understand having Conor McGregor in there, and he's not even, when people have Conor McGregor in your Mount Rushmore, they start arguing and saying, you're a casual, you don't know shit. He's not the complete fighter. But to me, he's a draw. He can fight. He put the UFC on his back, kind of made the UFC into what it is today. So you can have McGregor there. But to say that Ronda Rousey did the same thing, I know she broke boundaries for women in the sport, but she's not even the best female fighter that we've seen. Well, there's so many. I don't understand. If you're talking your Rushmore is your best fighters, you can't have Ronda Rousey.
Well, that's why I think you got to distinguish, and in defense of Dana, is Mount Rushmore the top 5 fighters of all time? If you ask Dana who is top 5 fighters of all time, I think you'd get different answers to what he's provided here for his Rushmore. Mount Rushmore is top 4 most influential fighters. That's why Dana White's going through, okay, he's been in the UFC in its entirety, the whole 25 plus years of the industry.
30 plus.
Who has had the biggest impact on the industry for him? And that was Ronda Rousey, because really she was the pioneer and the one that brought women's sports or women UFC to where it is.
But if you get knocked out by Holly Holm in that fashion, right, and you lose to
Amanda
Nunes multiple times, I don't think you're the best female fighter, so you shouldn't be on Rushmore. But like having people like John Jones there, certified GOAT, should be on there. GSP, the best in his division, right? Conor McGregor, the best in the featherweight division. You can't not acknowledge that. I mean, you got Volk there as well. You could make a case for Volk being on a Rushmore for what he's done for the sport too. Not Ronda Rousey.
Like, okay, that's where Dana's contradicted himself, because JSP and Conor McGregor, 2 polar opposites in terms of their career.
Exactly right.
And how can you have a Mount Rushmore that doesn't include Anderson Silva, the probably most popular and entertaining fighter of all time? It's very harsh from Dana to not include the Spider in this list. And then going even further back to the OGs, someone like Chuck Liddell, who basically has living CTE right now from the damage that he copped in his career, and Dana doesn't have the respect to put him above someone like Ronda Rousey? Really, Dana?
Yeah, I know Dana didn't really like the Spider, Anderson Silva. They had a bit of back and forth. I think he wanted to fire him at one stage. But look, if not Ronda Rousey, who do you put in? If it had to be a female, I'm saying it's Amanda Nunes.
No, but see, there's no females on Mount Rushmore. This is a male-dominated list.
Well, the actual Mount Rushmore does not have any females. So if we're keeping it in line with the actual Mount Rushmore, that seems to be fair. But like I said, you're talking best fighters. It's got to be John Jones on there, GSP. I would say Anderson Silva and Conor McGregor.
Well, that's why my Mount Rushmore.
Khabib?
Khabib could be on there, but like he's just a pure wrestler, very modern.
Russians can't go on Mount Rushmore?
John Jones, Conor McGregor, for me, definitely on there. And then the next 2, I'm probably going to go Chuck Liddell for just being an OG, someone that brought the sport to where it is. You've got to give respect to the elders of the sport.
So you're saying who has impacted the sport the most?
Who's impacted the sport the most? So John Jones, Conor McGregor, Chuck Liddell, and then Anderson Silva. They're 4 of probably the most entertaining and known UFC fighters of all time. You can't talk about the UFC without mentioning those 4 guys.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and you could probably revisit this discussion then 10 years from now and have a completely different Mount Rushmore.
Because this is not best fighters of all time. This is like most influential fighters throughout the history of the UFC.
Yeah, and then there's a case for Ronda Rousey because she put women's UFC or women's fighting, women's MMA on the map.
Yeah, women's fighting is really doing really well for UFC right now.
Well, no, it's probably in a bit of a low period right now, but she was one of the biggest draws in the UFC at the time. And I remember everyone was buying into the hype. That was up there with the rivalries of John Jones and Daniel Cormier.
I mean, she was in the
People
entourage.
wanted to see if she was going to get knocked out, if she was going to keep this win streak. she's transcended into WWE. She's gone into Hollywood. She was on Ellen. I think she cried on Ellen a couple of times. She became a celebrity. So again, what she did for the sport is pretty impactful.
She's on the Mount Rushmore of biggest frauds in the UFC, but we'll talk about that another time.
Let's talk about Khamzat Chimaev. Okay, he's making his comeback at UFC Abu Dhabi, UFC 308.
Yeah.
Will be UFC 308 Abu Dhabi, right? He's going up against Robert Whittaker, our Aussie Australian.
Fight that should have happened in Saudi Arabia now has been postponed, or at least will resume in Abu Dhabi.
Khamzat Chimaev had a bit to say about Dricus du Plessis. Khamzat said, obviously he wants to take the belt from Dricus du Plessis, but to quote Khamzat, he said, we need to get the title back to normal people, man. This gay who have the belt, man, not normal.
Look, I have to agree somewhat here with Khamzat. The actions of Dricus do, they do look similar to that of a gay man kissing other men in the octagon post-fight. But Khamzat Chimaev, I don't really think you should be talking about the current champion, because does he even get a title fight if he beats Robert Whittaker?
I think he's in line to be in the discussion of maybe a title eliminator or, eventually a title fight. You're right, Khamzat does have to worry about getting to fights. That's one thing he's struggled in the UFC with. He's got to get past Robert Whittaker, who's a tough opponent in itself. But to have a go at the champ like that, and call him gay. I don't know if he meant to say this guy, but he called him this gay.
I think he meant gay. He knew he's very calculated.
He knew what he was talking about. But like I said, he's not really wrong about Dricus. Dricus has some rugby tendencies. He's like a rugby lad. Kisses his trainers, kisses blokes, loves getting on a big bender. Who knows what happens on those benders? But right now, he is the champion in that division. He is the champion at middleweight. He's beaten formidable opponents. Sean Strickland, Israel Adesanya. He's proven himself. It'd be a tough matchup for Khamzat. It's not a walk in the park, so I don't know if he could talk like that. Dricus du Plessis did respond and said, you should worry about getting to the octagon first, Khamzat.
Any fight, really. He said any fight.
Not just your fight. Don't just worry about your fight. Worry about any fight, because you're struggling to get there. You're always ending up in a hospital bed, or there's some excuse why you can't make weight. Get in the ring. UFC fans want to see you in the ring, and maybe wake your way to that DDP fight, because that would be an interesting fight.
But this is why I love the UFC. This is the only sport in the world where opponents can call each other gay and it's still okay.
Yeah.
It's like Khamzat calling him this. Maybe an American fighter couldn't do it, maybe because he's from Chechnya. But this is the trash talk that I want. This is something that, okay, they might not have a fight, but this is at least starting to build up to a fight. You can already see they're going at each other, and Khamzat is very funny and entertaining, and this is his character.
Listen, Khamzat has beaten Kamaru Usman, Gilbert Burns, some great opponents, right?
Well, some people are going at the people that he's versed and beaten. I think the three fighters, or the three best fighters that he's beaten, are on like a combined 10-fight losing streak or so.
Regardless, he's not that many wins away from an actual title shot, realistically. He's got a massive following. He's a superstar in the sport, okay? He's residing out of Dubai now. He's got a massive Arab following. He could very well be next in line for a title shot. So you could see him facing someone like Sean Strickland, someone like DDP, or someone like a Robert Whittaker down the line for a title shot. Well, you never know.
There's been jokes going around now about shit that Khamzat has talked shit about people in the past. One being Leon Edwards and another being DDP. Both of them are now, Leon Edwards has lost his title, but have been champions and have lost and have had title fights. Khamzat hasn't been in a championship discussion probably since 3 years ago. This is the best position that Khamzat's been in since at least 2020, when he went on that massive streak of just fighting 3 people in 3 months. Khamzat needs to win this fight, at least to boost his stock back up as an active fighter, firstly. And then, it's all good and well to be talking shit and having these, massive fights, or talking about all these fighters you'd want to fight. But if you're not being active and not winning these fights, it doesn't mean much. So he needs to win.
Well, Robert Whittaker recently came out and said he's been training with Jai Opetaia, right? Jai Opetaia, world-class boxer, fought on many cards in Saudi Arabia, IBF champion. This guy's a freak boxer. To go toe-to-toe with a champion like Jai Opetaia, you're preparing for a freak striker in Khamzat Chimaev. So he's prepared for the stand-up game against Khamzat. We know Whittaker is going to not struggle, but he's going to have a test up against Khamzat's wrestling, who's someone that just smothers you all the time. So Whittaker's, I think, ready to go. He was zoned in for that fight against Ikram. He's going to be the same level of prepared for Khamzat. So, again, interesting fight. I don't think it's going to be a walk in the park for Khamzat. He needs a good showing. It's not going to be a get in there, John Jones, maul him, and that's it. You're next in line for a title shot. He's going to have to put in some hard work in this fight against Whittaker.
And because it's a co-main, it's going to be 5 rounds, I think. So in a 5-round fight, we're going to finally see Khamzat, if it does go past round 3, see how long his gas tank can go for Because against Kamaru Usman, it was terrible. He was gassing out early in the second.
Khamzat also revealed why he's been missing weight, and he's blamed Darren Till.
Oh, yeah, on the Twitter Spaces.
He's blamed his best mate Darren Till for eating too many chocolates.
He said Darren Till was one of the reasons that he missed weight was because Darren Till loves chocolates, and then that kind of went on to Khamzat. Khamzat couldn't stop eating the chocolates as well.
And that's why they've stopped hanging out with each other. Yeah, I mean, that Twitter space was very unique. You had an MMA guru on there. You had Darren Till on there. Khamzat Chimaev in there. Look, Khamzat does have an issue with following the rules. Whether it's pulling out for a fight, whether it's making weight for a fight, he didn't seem to care. I remember with Joe Rogan having the shits with him in the middle of the octagon, saying, well, why did you not make weight? And he had no excuse for it. That's the one thing that's holding him back. I think when you see how professional, some of these other Middle Eastern fighters take it, like your Khabibs, your Islams, it looks like he's just doing this for fun. It's all a joke to him, but he has the ability to be one of the best in the sport. He just got to switch on.
Well, to be fair to Khamzat, that post-fight against Kevin Holland, where he came in on short notice, he was supposed to fight Nate Diaz. Now, there has been conspiracy theories or, people thinking that Khamzat missed weight purposely because the UFC told him to, because they didn't want him to absolutely maul Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz got his Song fight, that fight card. If he had versed Khamzat, he probably would have killed him.
Yeah.
So I think Khamzat probably did miss weight on purpose. There was something fishy going on there. There wasn't exactly any reason why he missed the weight by that much for that fight.
Yeah, no, and I don't. Where is Darren Till right now? What's he doing? Is he just being a bum and waiting for a fight? Is he going to return to the UFC? I think we saw him on some Dubai influencer card. Is he going? I know George Masvidal's making a comeback to the UFC. Are we going to see Darren Till in the UFC anytime soon?
Dana White just laughed at the actual idea that Jorge Masvidal would make it back to the UFC. He's like, he was asked, I don't know if it was a post press conference at a Contender Series, like, oh, Jorge Masvidal wants to come back to the UFC. Just laughed it off. He's not entertaining it. So I feel like Darren Till's probably in that same boat, in that if Dana doesn't want you back, you're probably not going to get to fight anytime soon.
Got to be one of the weirdest friendships as well, Darren Till and Khamzat Chimaev. Like, it's like, it looks like a forced diversity casting in a Netflix movie. Like, how are these two guys mates?
Well, anyone that's, I think even like anyone that's friends with an English person that doesn't speak English that well, like Alex Pereira and Sean Strickland, all of a sudden they're best mates, even though one's knocked each other out and they can't really converse with each other. He has to speak through a translator. It's a weird friendship. I don't know. Like I'd be up there with, that'd be two of the weirdest friendships in the UFC.
Well, it's reported that Umar Nurmagomedov will be cage side this week's event at the Sphere between Merab and Sugar Sean O'Malley. Nick, Umar next in line for a title. Is he gonna go in the octagon like Merab did?
I think he definitely will. I think after his fight win at UFC Fight Night in Abu Dhabi, he's been almost guaranteed a title shot. Dana White said he's going to get it. But Merab and even I think Sugar Sean, Piotr Jan, they've spoken a lot of shit about Nurmagomedov because I don't think they believe
They don't think he earns it. They said he hasn't earned it.
They're saying that he's just doing it on the back of his last name, on the back of Khabib's success. But looking deeper into the Nurmagomedov brotherhood or, tribe, if you have that last name, you are undefeated, not in the UFC, but in MMA.
Nurmagomedovs are 65-0 in the UFC.
And that just goes back.
In the UFC or just everywhere?
Just everywhere. Because Usman Nurmagomedov, who had his title fight in Bellator on the weekend, he won. He's continued his undefeated streak. Umar won on UFC Abu Dhabi Fight Night. He's undefeated. And Khabib is 29-0. So collectively, they're 65-0. So if you are a Nurmagomedov and you are fighting, you are not going to lose that fight. So
let me just repeat that. If you are a Nurmagomedov, you are 65-0 in fighting.
So I don't see where people are saying he's undeserving because he's most likely going to win any fight that he gets himself into. And then on the back of that,
you talk about who else trains with him. Islam Makhachev, who's the lightweight champion right now.
And has only lost one fight.
Yeah.
So is this the best training or fight style in the world? You can't argue with it.
No, they run the sport. It's like MMA. It's like how sprinters are usually Jamaican or, African sprinters. West African, yeah. Right? You got your long distance runners being probably Ethiopian.
Kenya.
The best fighters in the world are Dagestani Russians. Let's just call it as it is.
You can't argue with the facts and the stats.
You can talk about your Daniel Cormier and your Henry Cejudo Olympians. You can talk about
wrestling.
You can talk about that style of wrestling, but the stats show Dagestanis run MMA. It's not even a question. They're not even wrestling. It's striking as well. Islam's a stand-up striker.
Combat Sambo. It's just it's the big thing. And I'm just thinking, does it take off elsewhere other than Dagestan? Or do you have to go to Dagestan, fight and train with Khabib to be that level of success?
I saw an Instagram reel the other day of a guy who makes money running or flying people in and out of Dagestan to train. He says, I will fly you here, sort out accommodation, you train. It's a camp.
Hey, it worked for Bilal
It's a
Muhammad.
camp.
It worked for Bilal.
And Bilal doesn't say that was solely the reason, but let's be honest, Khabib being in your corner, very significant.
I just want to know now as well, though, if you look at, I don't know, actually, before, did you see cage side of Usman's victory? Khabib. Like, given the
Well, he wanted
it was giving it to Umar. He was bloody submitting him on the side of the octagon.
Yeah.
People were thinking like, Khabib misses the octagon that much. He needs to fight.
Well, he wanted Usman to go in for the kill when he went for that strike. So he was yelling out, "Go, go, go!" And he was that ready to get involved. He was strangling Umar
on the sidelines. So like that for me is like, okay, Khabib still has it. He's still got it. I reckon he'd come back. Just
mate.
That footage alone of him submitting someone on the sidelines of the octagon. He wants to do it. He wants to get back in there. He has a need to fight somebody or to submit someone. It's hard to coach when you've done it.
Well, out of someone that's been out of the octagon for so long, when you compare him to the people like Daniel Cormier, who's been out of the octagon for a while, maybe even a GSP who still keeps himself fit, I would take Khabib as the person that could just walk straight back in. These other guys maybe need 6 months, maybe need intensive. I would say Khabib could just walk straight in. He's still training with these guys every day. Islam's even said it. He's like, mate, Daniel Cormier, you're in a golf cart. Okay, you barely even walk for your recreational activity. Khabib's still in the gym every day.
He says he trains but doesn't do the cardio that as much, and he eats way too much. Like you could see Khabib's a lot fuller than what he previously was. I don't know if he could fight at lightweight, maybe light heavyweight at his current weight. I don't know.
Now, Nick, you've been in your fair share of roadside altercations, okay? We've just seen Israel Adesanya, footage of Israel Adesanya having a road rage incident with, let me just repeat that. Footage of Israel Adesanya in a road rage incident. I think it's in New Zealand.
It looked like it was New Zealand. I think it was reported to be in New Zealand. You could see camera footage of him mouthing off at another driver. Now, this is the height of stupidness.
Yeah.
Anyone that ever tries to have a road rage or any sort of argument with an MMA fighter,
why would you?
What are you gonna achieve out of this? Unless you're thinking ahead and like, okay, this guy can hit me and his hands and legs or feet are registered weapons, and maybe I can get some sort of compensation out of this.
Yeah.
Okay, but you're still copping a massive hit from a striker that could kill you.
I wouldn't challenge a UFC fighter unless I was surrounded by 5 people that I know could jump in with me, and that's cousins or some family members that I know that could attack a UFC fighter. Maybe we would be comfortable. Imagine what's going through this bloke's mind. It's Israel Adesanya coming up out of his Ferrari or whatever supercar it was. And he's going ready to go toe to toe with him. You're going to get kicked in the head. You're going up against one of the best strikers in his division. Why would you even continue to move forward with it? Like, unless you're with people, that could be maybe a 2-on-1, a 3-on-1. I'm still backing Israel Adesanya. Why would you go up against the UFC fighter?
Now, I don't know what happened in the altercation, but Adesanya's now, I think, taking him to court for racial abuse or something like that. But I will say to Izzy, like, I know it's hard probably being a superstar. Everyone wants to annoy you or even, maybe try and seek compensation somehow. But in those situations, I feel like you got to just be the bigger man and get out of there.
Well, Izzy says he's going to be pressing charges for racial abuse, so who knows what was said between them. But I like to see that these UFC fighters are human as well. They get into a bit of roadside.
Yeah, but like you don't want a situation where you're Arman Saruki and punching someone in the crowd. You got an issue, an apology, you get suspended. It's just not worth it. Marab tried to intimidate someone in the crowd after someone badmouthed him. Like, I know Dana White would be telling these guys, please don't do anything stupid. Just leave. Leave the situation because it's not worth it. What are you going to? No matter what happens in that situation, you're going to walk away the loser. If Adesanya hits him, no matter what racial abuse was said towards him,
you're going to
look like the bad guy. Yeah. It's unfair, but it is what it is.
Well, there was no vision of him throwing punches. It was just kind of arguments and the guy went off. Could have been a lot worse, but you know what? The guy's an absolute idiot for trying to square up against Israel Adesanya. The guy's huge. He's tall. He's filled out a bit more. You can see he's put on some muscle. He didn't look too bad against DDP either, striking wise. So very stupid move from this New
Zealander?
Yeah, I wouldn't say New Zealander, but it's like, someone that just gets out of the car. Not like I wouldn't call him a bystander, but just
NPC.
Yeah, civilian. That was the word. Very stupid move, but very stupid move by this civilian.
Yeah, but I would go back to now, like, I like to think I can handle myself in those situations.
I've seen you in a fight. I don't know. You need some backup.
But in that situation, if I can see the cauliflower ears or any sort
You've
of
seen
like
those skits,
any
yeah.
sort of damage on their knuckles, it's like I'm second guessing myself. Hey, maybe it was my fault.
If you had to,
Maybe it was my fault.
If you had to square up against any UFC fighter right now, who would it be?
Well, I would take like a flyweight.
That's what I would. My mind goes straight to flyweight.
Can it be a woman? Can I try and fight a woman?
No.
It has to be a man.
Because then Kayla Harrison still probably beat the shit out of me.
I would definitely go straight to a flyweight, so I have the weight advantage.
Flyweight or bantam?
I'm not going to go Kairouz France because he just knocked out Usyk.
Yeah, he's got some hands.
I think Brendan Royval. I've seen him in person. I reckon I could take him.
Pantoja, yeah.
That'd be my best. That'd be my best bet because
I'd actually say Steve Usyk, and that's because he just got knocked out, and he's a bit taller. He's a bit taller than I am, but I reckon I got about 20-something kilos on him. I reckon take him down to the ground. You know, I would lose the fight, but I'm saying I'd be competition.
Look,
for Steve.
But that's where we've got to use our weight advantage and some sort of wrestling training to try and dominate them, close the distance, maybe use some sort of foreign objects in the vicinity of the cars to try and benefit myself a bit. But anything above flyweight, we're going bantamweight, they're killing us.
No, I agree.
These guys are trained killers. So
I mean, we
stand
just
no
read
chance.
that Darren Till's been eating too much chocolate, so I don't know if he's how good his cardio is. I know he hasn't been in the octagon too much.
He doesn't need to go 5 rounds against anyone on the road. He just needs to go for a good 30 seconds to 1 minute.
That's true.
That 30 seconds to 1 minute, cardio is not necessary. It's just pure skill and domination by these fighters.
Okay, let's take a preview at boxing just quickly because the Canelo fight is going head-to-head against UFC NOCHE. It's Mexican Independence Day. From what I've read online, the UFC had to significantly drop their prices at the Sphere.
Yep.
Not to say that UFC Sphere is a failure, but I think they started to get a little bit worried that people were going over to see Canelo, who is the best boxer in the world and happens to be Mexican, on Mexican Independence Day. So, again, we've spoken about this in the coming weeks. Who is going to outsell? The UFC? I'm just talking in pay-per-views. UFC NOCHE or Canelo Alvarez, who's going to outsell each other?
Well, I feel like the gate will probably be... I think T-Mobile Arena is a bigger arena, so they'll have a higher gate. But pay-per-views, it'll probably go towards UFC. I think the UFC is better than boxing, but I don't know. Americans, they might still like the old people might still prefer boxing. It's not like it's a walk in the park for UFC.
We've spoken to boxers like Sean Porter. We've seen people comment on it like Oscar De La Hoya, who hates Canelo Alvarez, but he just thinks it's not going to outsell. He struggles to sell his past pay-per-views that you saw with Munguia, didn't really sell too highly. The UFC Sphere in itself is an attraction. You got Sugar Sean, who's pretty much the face of the UFC, as some people refer to him as. I think worldwide, you're going to see more PPV sales for the UFC as opposed to Canelo Alvarez right now.
Sean O'Malley did talk a bit of shit about Canelo. He's like, people actually know who's fighting in the UFC. People don't even know who Canelo's versing. I think he referred to him as Burrito. His name's
Canelo versus Berlanga.
So I think I wouldn't discount Canelo. He's the best fighter in the world. He's the biggest draw in boxing, and every fight that he puts on is significant. Yes, he's versing someone that, might not be a world beater, might not be someone that's that well known, but he's still an undefeated fighter. And it's something that, if he could beat Canelo, that's something significant. So people will tune in.
There's also other Latino draws on there. You got Rolly Romero looking to avenge his loss against Pitbull Cruz. Alessandro Lara, 40-year-old who knocked out Michael Zarafa. We were there. He's still defending his title there as well. So there's some popular fighters on the card too. It's just as a worldwide mass appeal for this boxing event, I don't think it's going to outsell the UFC.
Well, I just think that's just the nature of how combat sports is at the moment. MMA, UFC is more popular than boxing, especially because of how they kind of put it together. Turk El Sheikh, when he puts on a boxing event, it's a bit more exciting because he's getting in all these big names. He's putting a lot of money towards it. This is a Canelo promotion. PBC's running it. So I don't know. I'm just saying, I wouldn't be surprised if the Mexicans and the Americans are loyal to Canelo and go to T-Mobile Arena. Boxing is still known as the sport in Vegas. Yes, MMA is on the rise, but if a big boxing fight's happening, people want to go to it.
I wouldn't say MMA is on the rise. I think UFC has surpassed boxing, right, as the combat sports in the world right now. It has. It sells more. It's a well-funded organization. Now, that's not to say that these boxers aren't making a lot more money than these MMA fighters, but as an event, as a sporting spectacle, UFC beats it.
Well, right? Dana White was asked, are you going to get into boxing? And he's like, man, I tried, but trying to talk to these boxers is too hard.
Yeah.
And that's what De La Hoya's had a fallout now with Canelo Alvarez.
Hey, Oscar De La Hoya is going to be in attendance. He's going to be at UFC Sphere. He hates Canelo Alvarez that much. He's willing to go support Dana White, who he also hates. And they've traded back and forth accusations about being on cocaine and someone cheating on their partners or whatever it is. But to the fact that Oscar De La Hoya is going to be seated as a guest of Turki El-Sheikh at UFC Sphere is pretty...
Is he a guest of Dana or is he a guest of Turki El-Sheikh?
He's a guest of Turki El-Sheikh. I don't think Dana wants to sit next to him, but he's going to be there at the UFC. This is like an alliance between boxing and UFC finally coming together.
Well,
Oscar De La Hoya and Dana.
The enemy of my enemy is a friend.
my friend. Yeah.
So I think Turki El-Sheikh and Oscar De La Hoya have adopted that because Turki El-Sheikh has said he's not the biggest fan of Canelo because he's tried to get him on a fight card, I think in Saudi or even on a Riyadh season card, but it's hard to negotiate with Canelo. But for me personally, I want Turki El-Sheikh and Canelo to be tight because Canelo needs to have that big money fight with Terence Crawford.
Yeah.
Terence Crawford is the only other fighter in the world who can be a big draw like Canelo, but for some reason they haven't fought. And Terence Crawford has spoken plenty about how he's looking for that one fight to send him off into the sunset, that one big money fight, and Canelo's that fight. But the only person in the world that can make that fight happen is Turki El-Sheikh.
With the dollars and cents.
So Turki El-Sheikh, making those comments about Canelo, it's not very promising.
All right, let's get into our UFC NOCHE preview. Okay, we're going to pick the fights that we're looking forward to the most. It is a stacked, mainly Mexican Independence Day fight. Nick, we're starting off with Rosas Jr. versus, I can't even pronounce that name, but it's $6.
Raul Rosas Jr., who is known now as like the young and up-and-coming fighter in the UFC. Yes, he's had one loss.
Mr. Potato Head.
Mr. Potato Head, Chi Wee Wee.
Yeah.
He's $1.13 coming into this fight, and that's because I think they're trying to position him to become the youngest champion in the UFC's history.
Sure he's fighting on the prelims, which I would have thought he'd be closer to the main card.
Well, I think because he's still so young and the fighter he's versing isn't that well known, he's on the early prelims. I just think it's like he's like the new next wave Mexican fighter. It's rude not to have him on there. He's fought already so recently, so he's taken this fight not on short notice, but it's a quick turnaround for him. So I think they're just giving him a layup, let him continue winning, let him build his profile. It wouldn't be a Mexican card without having one of the most famous Mexican fighters on there. So that's why he's on there.
He's on one of them. He's up there. He's getting well known. He's building his social profile.
He's already lost in his career, so don't be surprised. Like a $6 outsider is his opponent. Like if you wanted to have a punt, you could take that $6. He's not someone that's a freak in Raul Rosas Jr.
Yeah. Okay. One I'm looking forward to this fight, which was supposed to be on UFC.
It was 303.
303. Yeah. That was with Alex Pereira.
McGregor originally.
Yeah. Diego Lopez versus Brian Ortega. Who are we going?
Look, I think Brian Ortega, after the embarrassment of firstly asking to go up in weight, then absolutely pulling out of the fight, I think you got to go with Diego Lopez. He's known as the more dominant fighter. I'm not that.
I think it's a really bad style matchup for Brian Ortega.
Yeah, I just don't think either fighter is that much better than the other. And Brian Ortega does have a better fight record than Diego Lopez. Whether that actually means anything, I don't know. Both fighters aren't that better than. It's a pick 'em for me. I think if you're going to actually take a bet, I would take Brian Ortega just based on the value. The fact that he's a $2.55 outsider, I'd take the value there. I think Brian Ortega could get it win. But again, I wouldn't really go either way. If it's a 3-round fight, I think the fight to go the distance is the best bet.
I think the UFC love Diego Lopez. Okay, I think he's
a character.
I think he's the next big thing for the UFC, especially to that Mexican audience. Not to say he's going to get any favorable treatment, but when Joe Rogan's talking about you as the next big thing in MMA, it's pretty big. I think it's a bad style matchup for Brian Ortega. I think he's got 1 foot out this featherweight division. He doesn't want to be. He doesn't want to be there.
He already said he doesn't want to be there.
Exactly right. He pulled out of the last one because he didn't make weight. To take Dan Ige on short notice, yes, he got tested a bit, Diego Lopez, in the back end of that fight, but he's taken that fight on short notice as well. I think he comes prepared. The guy's an absolute freak, ready for war. It's probably going to be a war. Could be a crazy grappling contest because both are unbelievable grapplers. Brian Ortega has won many times by submission. A lot of people have him to win by submission in this matchup, but I'm going with Diego Lopez. If he can keep it, as a striking fight, I think Diego Lopez pieces him up. Keep it off the feet, and he wins.
Well, Lopez needs to win.
Keep it on the feet, and he wins.
So Lopez needs to win to actually get into title contention because that division, once Topuria beats Max Holloway, or if he does beat Max Holloway, it's Volk and then who else? Diego Lopez is the next guy in line. So I think he's more desperate because Ortega, even if he wins this fight, he's not going to compete against Ilia Topuria. It's going to go straight up to the next division. So I think Diego Lopez is more desperate, and that probably could give him the edge in this fight. I don't know.
I'd like to see a Diego Lopez up against Ilia Topuria, the two rising stars of this division, the two next faces of the UFC, whichever division they end up being in down the line. It's exciting. It's one of the, I think it's going to be one of the more exciting fights of the night.
Well, I thought it could be co-main. Obviously, there's 2 title fights, but this was the UFC International Fight Week's co-main event before it got dropped when Ortega pulled out. So it's a big fight. It's underrated.
Next up, we have Valentina Shevchenko versus Alexa Grasso.
3. There's a third fight. This is the third time they've fought each other. The last one was a draw, and then the first one, Grasso got the victory. So I don't know. This is a weird one because it's like when a fighter has a draw, is that a victory for the title holder? Because then she's up 2-0.
Look, it was a big 5th round. I actually just rewatched this fight this week. A lot of controversy behind the draw. I think that being called a 10-8 round in the 5th round was massive for the champ. A lot of people thought Shevchenko did enough to win the title. She lost that last round, and that ended up causing the draw. So she's in line for a rematch. This is now being known as one of the most notable female rivalries in the sport, and they deserve it. I think it's going to be an absolute slugfest like the last one, but I think Grasso gets the victory. Not that Shevchenko, look, she was formidable as an opponent. I just think she's just kind of on the back end of her career, and it's done.
Shevchenko's only lost to Amanda Nunes and Alexa Grasso. So she has, in the women's division, she's probably very, very dominant. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not a big female UFC fighter fan. I don't watch many fights. I've said this many times. But if I'm going to have a bet, which I am.
Don't go the outsider again. You've taken too many outsiders.
I'm taking Shevchenko, mate. She won the last fight. Like you said, we rewatched the last round.
Yeah.
She did probably get robbed. It was a very questionable 10-8 round.
Could have been a 10-9, Could have been a 10-9 and Shevchenko wins.
So I think she should have at least won by a split decision. So on the back of that, I'm going to go with one of the best female fighters of all time, Shevchenko. She's got a scarier name. She looks scarier. Alexa Grasso looks a bit too nice.
Yeah, I reckon the judge have just made it a 10-8 round just so we could get this trilogy. And it would
have been a trilogy regardless. It would have been a trilogy. That's what I'm saying now. But if Shevchenko wins, it's 1-1-1. So do they need to have a 4th fight?
Some people do have a 4. You know what I mean? Some people do need the 4th fight.
Rare,
if there's been
very rare.
back and forth. But as I said, women's division is going to be one of the marquee fights of the year. And I think it goes probably goes a distance similar to the last fight.
So that's why best bet of probably the night, because this is what happens in female fighting. The fight to go the distance is paying $1.52.
Grasso did win the first one by a rear naked choke.
Very lucky.
First fight.
Very lucky. I'm pretty sure Shevchenko was like a very, very short price favorite in that fight. She's like $1.07. I know that because it cost me my multi. I'm not going to talk about it. But the fight to go the distance is probably the best bet. Women's fights, it's like flyweight fights. They don't have a lot of damage behind their punches. It's just harder to knock people out.
Majority
harder to get a finish.
Distance, yeah.
Yes, it's going to go 5 rounds, which is tough, but I'll take the $1.50.
Yeah, let's go to the main event. Sugar Sean O'Malley versus Merab. Nick, for me, it's a Sugar show. Well, okay, I'm sticking with Sean O'Malley. We've interviewed him in person before. The guy oozes with confidence. He's already put out on Twitter, we're 1 week out from the night where he makes history, Mexican Independence Day, clean knockout. He's calling his shot. He's saying knockout. He's done this before. He did that with Cheeto Vera. He's doing it again right now. Everyone counted him out against Aljamain Sterling. They said he wasn't going to match up against his wrestling. You can't count this guy out. He's got a great coaching staff. Tim Welch said it's going to be one of his toughest tests. But I think ultimately he gets it done. Why is it his toughest test? Because Merab is relentless with pressure.
Cardio machine.
Yeah, exactly right.
And looking at the betting, I was very, very surprised to see actually how much Sugar Sean was paying. I thought he'd be a much shorter price favorite. I don't know. I guess because it's such a bad, stylistically not.
You got him at around $1.70.
$1.70 for Sugar Sean. $2, I think, $2.15 for Merab. Like Merab, look, you've seen many clips online now, TikTok, Instagram Reels, showing that he can get caught. He does get caught and cops a lot of damage to the face. And Sugar Sean is the one fighter probably in that division you don't want to get hit by. He's a striking machine. He can knock people out. He has that power. But I don't know. I can see Merab wrestling the shit out of Sugar Sean and ending the fight. I don't know. Aljamain was supposed to do that to Sugar Sean, but didn't do it. Sugar Sean was supposed to be going in with a rib injury to that fight as well, but somehow resisted all the takedowns. If he can do the same, he'll win this fight. But I think Merab is a better wrestler. And, the pressure that he puts on is a lot better than Aljamain. Well, so I should see him at least getting 2 to 3 takedowns early.
It's the biggest stage Merab has been on. Some people don't deal that well with pressure. You know, you got the lights of not only the world watching it, the Sphere for the first time. It's a big marketing push to be at the main event at the Sphere for the first time, the one and only. Sean O'Malley's been in the main event before. He knows what it's like. I just think not that it goes a distance. I actually think this fight may have a finish.
Yeah, no, I think my money, best bet, $2, fight not to go the distance. So I'm not going to pick a winner because I think either fighter can either knock each other out or wrestle and smother them. So like, I can see this fight not going the distance. That's where my money's going.
Yeah, I'm going to go Sugar Sean to win just head-to-head. I think he gets it done. I like the $1.72 value. Let's go through our best multis quickly before we give you a rundown of what to expect at the Sphere this weekend. Nick, what's your best multi?
My multi for the week or for this weekend is a 3-leg multi. The fight to go the distance in the Shevchenko fight. The fight not to go the distance in the main event. So Sugar Sean, Merab not to go the distance, and Raul Rosas Jr. head-to-head. All up, that's paying $3.40. Great value. Very easy multi, only 3 legs. They'll get it done.
$3.40. I mean, you're not really risking it all, are you, there with that one?
Hey, it's a very, very tough fight card. I don't want to take too big a risk. This is my money I'm talking about.
Okay, I'm going with Diego Lopez head-to-head to get the win. I think it goes the distance. I might take some action to go the distance. I think Diego Lopez wins. Alexa Grasso to get the win at $1.72. Backing it up. She's won before. Last fight was a draw. I think she just gets it done again. Sean O'Malley to win head-to-head. I do like a knockout. I think he wins by TKO, and it doesn't go the distance, but I'm just going head-to-head. 3 fighters head-to-head, Diego Lopez, Alexa Grasso, and Sugar Sean O'Malley. That's paying $4.49.
Okay, you're going at my value. That's not much.
It's a little bit higher than yours, and I've just gone head-to-head. If I wanted to say Diego Lopez by decision, I would. I'll probably put that on closer to the fight.
Yeah, but you've taken a female fighter to win. That's very tough.
That's risky.
That's a multi-killer.
So you're having a go at my... It is
a
risk.
Multi-killer.
It is risk. I like Alexa Grasso. I think she gets it done. And it probably goes the distance as well. I have 2 fights to go the distance and Sugar Sean TKO.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. I mean, don't be shocked if Merab just mauls him, takes
Could be
him
an
down.
upset. We've seen that.
We saw what he did to Muhammad.
Bilal Muhammad did the same thing. People didn't think he could do it. He came in and he mauled the guy for 5 rounds. So it can happen.
The betting is saying that Merab is in this fight. He's not as big an outsider as I thought. People think he's going to get it done.
Yeah, and look, he's got a chin. Merab does have a chin. I mean, like, if Cheeto Vera could survive the knee that Sugar Sean gave him, I think Merab could survive it too.
Yeah, Cheeto Vera is special. Cheeto Vera is very special. I mean, Merab, we saw in that Moicano fight, he can take some damage and somehow miraculously recover and then win the fight. So I would expect Merab to do it as well.
Well, let's give you a preview of what to expect from the Sphere this weekend. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event for live fans. Dana White said this is going to be the best combat sporting event of all time. Now, the card doesn't really live up to it that much, but this is what's going to be inside the Sphere. It's said to be a 160,000 square feet event with 16K resolution cameras. Nick, I only thought it went up to 8K. I thought cameras only went up to 8K.
But why is there no 12K? Why does it go 4, 8,
16? It's a double.
They just double it each time.
In comparison, IMAX movie screens are less than 4,000 square feet.
Okay,
so we're talking 160,000 square feet screens.
Big budget.
Okay, the world's most advanced grade concert audio system, the highest resolution LED display. So the thing you have at home, it's a piece of shit. That television you have, this is the highest in the world. Okay, have you heard of haptic seats? Haptic seats.
I can't say that I've heard of haptic seats.
So this is where you're in an IMAX movie and you're jolting when something happens, and you know if you're on a roller coaster, you could see in the movie you're on the roller coaster in your chair.
It's 4D.
It's basically like 4D. You got haptic seats.
7D. There's 7D now.
So when Brian Ortega gets a sweat punched on his face, I think the fans in attendance will feel it.
They'll get some sprays on themselves.
Now the Exosphere will be utilized throughout the night. There'll be art. There'll be a movie. Apparently 90-second films will be played throughout the event. So right before the fighters walk out. So not only are you getting a spectacle in the fights, you're watching a Mexican-themed movie.
I feel like this is a bit too much for a UFC fight card. I heard Dana White saying that he's expecting Oscars and what's the other one's a TV one?
Emmys.
He's expecting Oscars and Emmys from this event. Yeah. That's his expectation. That's the amount of effort he's put into this. But come on, man, just let the fighters go.
Okay,
it's going to be distracting.
In-house stats being fed live to the viewers, so basically like a box score in the NBA, but as the punches come through, you'll be seeing the significant strikes. I'm assuming that's what they're doing.
Is anyone actually going to be watching the fights in the octagon?
Well, there's going to be a lot going on. You got the movies on. He said there's going to be Easter eggs on the screen.
$25,000 prize.
Yeah, if a fan in attendance sees the Easter egg on the screen that Dana White's talking about, you get $25,000. but also the fight's going to be on. So you got to be focusing on the fights.
So when he says Easter egg, is that like an Easter egg in a movie? Like you're seeing someone that shouldn't
I'm
be
thinking
there?
it's going to be a Mexican cameo. I think you're going to see like, the guy from Narcos or the guy from Breaking Bad with the big tat, El Chapo or something like that. This is one that I thought that was interesting as well. With the live voice app, fans will be able to listen to the commentary either English or Spanish.
What, like they just put an earpiece in?
Yeah, so basically you can hear Joe Rogan.
I've seen that
Yeah,
before.
through the app. So as the fights are going on, you're going to be hearing commentary. Some people like to listen with commentary.
That's very
but
popular.
Again, I'll repeat it.
That's very popular in tennis.
Or Spanish commentary.
Well, who's the Spanish commentators?
I don't know, Team Espanol.
Are they going to go through their table?
No, but I'm also saying English or Spanish. Like people are going to freeze. Okay. Yeah, that flew over your head a lot. And for the first time ever, an all-Mexican ring girl crew.
Is that racist?
Yeah, let's give a round of applause for the Mexicans
I feel like that's racist because you're selecting them based on their race.
Nah, look, the fighter kits will also be unique as well. They're going to be unique for this event. Each fighter must have a different fight. But the creative collaborations boast 29 Emmy wins, 80 Emmy nominations, 2 Oscar nominations, and 1 Golden Globe. This guy, Dana White's gotten guys to do the music and scores for the event, Oscar-nominated people to shoot the event. He said, we don't have just one production truck. We've got 4 production trucks for this event. So, oh my God, he's gone absolutely all out, Dana White, for this. He said it's going to be a bode or a tribute, a homage to Mexican fighters. I'm keen to see what it's going to be like. It's been very tight-lipped. Is it going to live up to the best sporting event, the best combat sports event of all time? I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Well, the last time Dana White made such a bold statement about UFC 300, it did kind of deliver. So, on the back of that, I would take Dana at his word. 4 production trucks, that's amazing.
It is.
16K screen.
Yeah.
I can't see how that can be a flop. This is going to be one of the biggest success ever. And if it's not, I'm never listening to Dana again. So
you've got our predictions for UFC NOCHE. Make sure you subscribe to @Jon-Bernard K on Instagram and the Kairouz Brothers on YouTube. Nick, let's go to our MMA Hot Take hotline. Make sure you get your hot takes in, calling that 1-800 number on the screen. Let us know your MMA Hot Takes. This week's comes from a caller. Let's hear what he has to say.
Hi there, guys. Fat Wang here. My hot take is that Ian Gary is the bull. Like, everyone's gotten on the lad for quite a while saying Ian Gary's a cuck. And you know what? Like, I can see it from first glance. If you're looking from the outside, and you're definitely in that sphere
that's the way
of people.
I see it.
Let's really break down the situation here. He ruined this nutritionist dude's marriage. Then he becomes the new bull, the young lad, the strong athlete that's taken over. And now he's got him serving meals for him. He's his nutritionist? Huh?
I'm going to cut this cuck off. Okay, because listen, mate, if you're in the vicinity of an ex-boyfriend, right?
Yeah. And you're paying him.
That's enough for me, mate. And look, I don't know if you saw this video that she put out recently, Ian Gary's wife. They obviously must have had a fight or something. She's making him wait outside with flowers and he's awkwardly smiling and singing songs, so he's trying to make amends with her after a fight. Now, as a wife, why would you post this on social media for? Are you trying to embarrass Ian Gary? Hasn't he been through enough? Wasn't he dragged through the mud through a fight week? Didn't he have to pull out of a fight because of you? Can you just let the guy be?
Well, the thing is, no person should ever film their husband in these intimate moments. Let him just be there.
These groveling moments.
And then on top of that, Ian Gary's already got a past history of being known as a cuck in the MMA community.
Yeah.
Now you're just providing more. You're just providing so much more damage towards him. You're just providing so much more ammunition for people to have a go at him. Why are you doing this for?
He's not beating the allegations of cuck with those videos coming out. I want to see Ian Gary do well. I like when they show the embedded and he's got his kid with him and the fighters are getting around him. But the wife is just too toxic for me, mate.
Well,
it seems like she wants to be the center of attention. And if you're posting, your husband is supposed to be a 27-year-old prize fighter, and you're showing him online grovelings and waiting outside in music like it's a movie, saying, "Hey, have I made it up to you yet?" You're embarrassing the guy.
There's some
the guy has to go to war for you and provide for you, and you're embarrassing the guy. It doesn't make sense. Ian Gary, man, honestly, you're better off just banning her from social media. Ban. I know he's taken his last name, but just ban her off social media.
I think there's some things that are just meant to stay private. This is one of those things, and Ian Gary, Look, I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. You're
Yeah.
very successful. You're doing a good job.
Mhm.
You're very happy, it seems like. I would just say cool it on the social media side with your wife. Tell her just, take a back
Take a
seat.
breather. Seriously.
Please. It's just like you're doing yourself no favors. Like, just imagine the next UFC fight week you have to go through.
She's just causing him grief in the MMA community's eyes. That's all I'm saying. You've gone from how to be a wag to the nutritionist allegations, right? To pulling out of a fight. Yeah, now you just beat MVP, but I don't know if the fight did too many favors. And now you're on Instagram holding flowers outside saying, will you let me back in the house?
Big L, unfortunately. for
Ian,
Gary.
come on, get your shit together, mate. We're rooting for you. But I think that's all for Trash Talk this week. Make sure you subscribe at Kairouz Bros on YouTube for more. We'll be bringing you more this week. More fighter interviews coming. Make sure you stay tuned. Ryan, back to you in the studio.